Another kind of adjustment you might often want to do is overall color adjustments. Take, for example, this image. This cute little guy is sipping on some ice cream or smoothie or something, but it looks like he's just not feeling very good because of the overall yellow cast that's happening here. This is common when we take pictures in tungsten light, and also common when you take pictures in fluorescent light. You might get a greenish cast or a cold bluish cast. You're not usually going to have this problem with stock photography, but you would probably have to make these adjustments if you ever take your own images and want to use them. So we're going to make this into a normal layer by double clicking on it, changing it away from being the background layer that's locked. And now we're going to add an adjustment layer to try to fix the overall yellow cast that we see here. First one I'd like to show you is the color balance adjustment. With this you get some nice sliders, and once again you can see we've added a new layer that is the color balance layer. And as we play with these sliders, you can see that what we're going to do is increase the cyan here, the overall cyan pixels in the image, or decrease those cyan image pixels and add red. Okay, so it's might be strange to you to see these on a balance. You might be used to thinking in either CMYK or RGB, but you'll find that this is a pretty normal thing in the photo world to adjust the balance between these two, and in a way they are complementary colors. There's a whole science to get into on why we use those, but this being an introduction, we'll leave it as it is. So you can see I can pull down the cyan towards making this a little bit redder overall, and we reduce some of those yellow pixels, whereas when I go this way it seems to only sort of get worse in the green direction. If I move on down to the next one, you can see we add some magenta that cuts away some of that yellow and green, but it begins to make the overall image a little bit more red than we might want. And last of all, here on this slider we can adjust towards the blues, away from the yellows. And so at the end of the day, a combination of these adjustments might allow us to overall improve the color in this image. So not saying this is perfect, but just letting you see the difference, how much more yellow overall this one is, whereas here we get a little bit more of the balance, adding some of those cooler colors in. You really notice the difference back here in the brick, where before the adjustment that mortar is all very yellow, and as we add the filter we restore some of the normal whiteness that's there. You can see also the difference happening in the skin tones. While he's still got overall a yellowish cast here, he's certainly not as sickly looking once these layers adjustments are in place. So that is one tool you can use, the overall color balance, where you actually see this happening side by side on each of these sliders. But we can be a little bit more mathematical with this. So before I show you one of the other features, I want to show you a nice little ability that we have over here on the tools. If we click and hold on this eyedropper tool, we get a pop-out menu to choose another one of the nested tools here, and we have the color sampler tool. So if I click on this, what I can do is identify a spot in the image that represents a specific sampling that I want to adjust. So I'm going to go into a spot up here on his forehead and create a selection. You can see that my properties or info panel pops out, and the spot that I just selected here is labeled with a number 1. And right now it's set up as an RGB, but I'm going to switch to CMYK by clicking and holding here and changing to CMYK. So we can see overall that there is a 97% yellow. That's a lot of yellow. 54% magenta and a 13% cyan. I'm going to keep an eye on these numbers as I do the next set of adjustments, so I want to have this panel visible. To do that, I'm going to pop out this column, slide it in a little bit so I still see a lot of the image but also the numbers. And now I'm going to add a curves layer. So this curves layer might look a little bit like what you've seen before if you've ever used the levels adjustment as we did in the previous video. And here we can actually change to the other three channels, R, G, and B, and do some similar adjustments to what we did a moment ago. So I'm going to switch to the red channel, and I can use this tool right here to select that little sampler on my curve. So as I hover over here, notice that in the panel over here, watch what happens there. I get a little circle that shows where that pixel is on the overall chart. Once I click on it, I actually add a point on my line that I can move up and down with the arrow keys. Moving up adds red, moving down adds cyan. Okay, see how that's happening? And notice that what's happening to the numbers over here in the info panel is that you can actually see the difference in cyan and the other colors as a result happening. So if I go down, you can see I'm increasing that cyan number. I'm also changing some of the other numbers as a result in minute ways. But overall, I do want to add a little bit more cyan to make this image cooler. So I'm nudging that down a little bit. Now what we'd ideally like to aim for, according to some of the science involved here, is for the cyan to be about 1/3 of the yellow. So that's going to be a really big challenge with this overly yellow image where we're at 98%. And we've only gotten this cyan up to about 17% with this adjustment. So we're probably going to need to make this through a combination of several different curves. But you can see we have at least increased cyan in this picture. Let's move on to the green. With green, we can use that same tool to go select this sample. You see where it's highlighted on the chart, and as we move it up, we are adding green. And as we move down, we're decreasing green and adding magenta instead. What we'd ideally like is for the magenta to be within 10 points of the yellow, which is also going to be quite a challenge in this image, since there is so much yellow. But nonetheless, you can see how that is already beginning to improve this image as I slide it down and therefore decrease some of the green that's contributing to that yellow. Last of all, we can switch to the blue layer. Do the same thing, select that sample. You can see where it's showing up in the chart. And as we go up, we're adding blue. As we go down, we're adding yellow. So that's something we don't really want to do. We don't need any more yellow in this image. If anything, we do need a lot of blue. Look at how much that's affecting the cyan or the yellow value as I go down. We're really affecting that overall yellowness in a big way with this adjustment. But it also is having an overall blue effect on the image as a whole. So we're going to want to find a balance, and the guidelines of numbers here is really a guideline. The pros really get very, very particular in here and add several different layers and do all kinds of adjustments. Nonetheless, that's something you can keep in mind by sampling a point in sort of the midpoint of a flesh tone. You can get this sampler, change it to CMYK, and keep an eye on the numbers. Again, ideally, you might want the cyan to be 1/3 of the yellow. You can see we had quite a challenge here to get there. And you might want the magenta to be within 10 points of the yellow. That's a guideline to get you started, and hopefully you have images to work with that don't present as much of a challenge as this one did. And you can see the before and the after. It's an improvement, but there's still some work to go to make this what it ought to be.